We are on the air. Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us tonight. My name is Chris Hall. I'm with the Greater Portland Council of Governments, and I'm your moderator for Meet the Candidates Night. I want to thank you for joining us. I want to thank all of you for taking the time to be more informed about the individuals who are running for council. To my right and to your left, we have two candidates who are running for the at-large seat on the council in Cumberland. And then to my left and to your right, I have three candidates running for the Cumberland Center seat. They're going to introduce themselves in a round of 2-minute introductions, and then I'm going to ask 5 questions, and each candidate will get to answer first. We'll go around the horseshoe each time, and I hope that you'll learn something about them and that they share some interesting information with you. We'll end with 2-minute closing statements, again, just following our rotation order. So with that, I am going to ask Will Albright to begin our 2-minute opening introductory statements.
My name is Carlton W. Albright, but everyone knows me as Will. I'll be on the ballot as Carlton W. Albright. I was born and raised in New York City and moved to Cumberland 6 years ago with my wife and 2 daughters. Now we have 3. I'm a film and television and news producer, and have worked with all sorts of different people in all different walks of life. I'm an active member of this community. I coach softball, basketball, soccer. I'm the primary caregiver to my daughters, as my wife works full-time and I am self-employed. I've filled many roles in the last 4 months due to COVID-19. One of the most important roles was, and it still is as homeschooler to my daughters. I've had a lot of time to think about the school system and its importance to our community and our children. It's imperative that we maintain our exceptional school system and make sure it meets the needs of our growing population. As our town grows, we need to strike a better balance between expansion and taking care of the needs of our current residents. Our current school system is bursting at the seams. In less than 10 years, we are projected to have over 600 additional children in the schools. That's a 28% increase of children attending MSAD 51. Our current solution has been to add portable classrooms while taking away green space. My daughter was in one for a year, and we have to be proactive with this rather than reactive. We're in the midst of a very pivotal time in our nation's history, historic pandemic, global warming at a catastrophic level, and historical social change that is way overdue in America and the world. All these things affect every level of government. I am running for town council to serve my community. As I look at the makeup of the current town council and talk to members of the community that I have frequent contact with, I don't feel represented. You often hear people running for the office say they want to give voice to the voiceless. In speaking with many different members of our community and parents with children in the school system, a voice is not the issue. They want someone to listen. And this speaks to representation. Many members of the community feel that the voice of working parents has nowhere to go. And with that, people disengage. I hope to engage in conversation with the residents of Cumberland and listen to what they have to say. Thank you.
Bill, thank you very much. Tom Gruber.
Thanks, Chris. I have lived with my wife in Cumberland for the last 35 plus years. I have served on the Cumberland Town Council for the last 9 years, and I had the opportunity to serve on most of the current committees and commissions. I am president of the Cumberland Food Pantry and have had the pleasure of serving on numerous boards in this community, in the area community, such as the president of the Preble Street, treasurer of Southern Maine Aging, and the vice president of Vet to Vet Board, which serves many veterans in our community. I am currently the chair of the Municipal Oversight Committee of the Community Block Grant, which, by the way, got us that walk-in freezer for the food pantry, which I'd love to fill. I was the vice president of operations at Mercy Hospital and later a senior vice president at Catholic Health East. I'm a retired Army officer, and I'm very active in helping our veterans. Additionally, I have umpired both softball and baseball for over 20 years here in Cumberland. I'm currently doing consulting for many companies, helping with them with the supply chain management. I am running out of time, and that is all I have to say. Thank you.
Tom, thank you very much. Allison Foster.
Good evening. I am extremely excited to be able to introduce myself to all of you, a couple in person and those virtually. As government touches our lives more intimately than any other form of government, and we should know and trust those that we grant this responsibility to. I've lived in Cumberland since 2013, having moved here with my husband and then 2-year-old from Massachusetts. My husband is from right next door in Yarmouth, but as our oldest has grown, and our family as well, as we now have 2 boys, as he follows in both his parents' footsteps on the soccer field, we've clearly invested in our Greeley gear. I'm a type A, goal-oriented, marathon-running firstborn, so take that as you will. While during my closing remarks, I will touch on why I believe I am the best candidate to fill the Cumberland Center seat on our council, I'd like to spend a minute sharing what drove me to run in the first place. My inkling to run for any position in our community started almost exactly 3 years ago, as I stood in line to cast my vote in one of our mid-year elections. As most of us probably do, I took that rarely available idle time to look at the pictures lining the wall of our current council chamber. Unfortunately, I noticed something pretty glaring. The faces barely changed as I moved picture to picture to picture. Perhaps an individual came off for a year or 2, but then back on. When I got to the voting booth, the sameness didn't end. I looked at multiple positions where I had no choice. The candidates were running unopposed. While I felt I still needed to get my feet under me, now is the time to be the change I wanted to see. And so I sit before you doing just that. Tonight, I hope to provide you with some insight as to the perspective I would bring to the council, as it's naive to think that any council person will not bring their own biases. While I think it's equally important, though, to understand how I'll break down those problems, and hope to do that through answering the questions. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you. I think we're next to Jason Record.
Thank you all for taking the time to learn more about us tonight, and thank you for the opportunity. I invite you all to visit my website to learn more about me and stay connected. The website is jasonrecordmaine.com, and my Facebook page is facebook.com/jasonrecordmaine. I hope to keep those going if elected. I'm Jason Record. I'm a proud Mainer, many generations over. I'm a dad of 3 school-age kids, Riley, Kelsey, and Colin, who are going into 8th grade, 5th grade, and 3rd grade, respectively. I am also a Mason, and I'm on the planning board in Cumberland. My wife, Laura, is a kindergarten teacher in Wyndham. I was raised in Clinton on a dairy farm and know all about long, dirty, hard work days. I've always had a need to be involved and like to help make things better, and still do, whether that is chaperoning the ski programs or helping at running club or to the triathlon or planning board or wherever. I'd rather help than just watch. I've been an entrepreneur always, starting my first business at age 16, then opening a retail store at age 19, and currently own 2 small businesses. I know fiscal responsibility and how to stretch a dollar. After some time away in Massachusetts mostly, I moved back to Maine 8 years ago and happily settled here. Our town is special. I like to say it is central to everywhere and a shortcut to nowhere, which makes our town wonderfully convenient yet quiet. It's what I love about it, and I want to keep it that way, and allow those that have been here for decades also afford to stay. We need a better balance of spending, growth, and sustainability. I am running to bring some diversity to the town council and to help with areas that need a better balance so our town will still be as great long into the future. We have an amazing community of smart, thoughtful, good-hearted people here. I am sure with everybody's input and good ideas, we can build a solid future. I would be pleased to represent you. Thank you.
Jason, thank you. And we'll conclude our opening statements with Bill Stiles.
Well, thank you very much. I enjoy public service, so I'm running for re-election. Just to give you a little bit of my background, I have a BS in microbiology and an MS in virology. I'm a retired business owner, a director of 2 current insurance companies, and have a current insurance license and a Series 7 qualification, which means I'm very familiar with bonding and that type of financing. I'm also a retired paramedic. These qualifications have come in handy to save the town monies. I've been able, through my insurance knowledge and my financial knowledge and my immunology knowledges, to come up with, help the Cumberland save money, some of the plans they put together. Now, I have 5 children and 1 grandchild who own homes in the town of Cumberland. So you can imagine that one of my principal roles is to make sure the property taxes are as low as they could possibly be, providing to the town the services that they desire. We, as on the Finance Committee, for which I am the chair, were very much aware of the trying times ahead of us because of the COVID-19, and we cut almost $1 million out of the budget. So one of my main goals is to provide the Cumberland the services requested at the lowest possible tax rate. Also, I have institutional knowledge because I'm the old folk on the council. I also want to continue to work on projects that are already in the pipeline, like I'm on the Joint Standing Committee, which is a committee between Cumberland and North Yarmouth. I'm also on the Cumberland County Budget Committee, which I just stood my first term last year. Historical building move, I want to hopefully get to see that done. And then we move into possibly putting an addition onto the library, for which it'll be done by public funding, and I want to be involved in that from the council position. And then I also want to maintain the progress I have with the food pantry, raising money to affect purchases and help the 4-H people by buying their animals and so forth. So I have the time to do it, and I don't have any more time to talk to you. So thank you very much.
Well, just a moment, Bill. We'll get back to you. Well, thank you all very much for that introduction. I want to start with the first of our 5 questions. Tom Gruber is going to kick us off with the answer, and then we'll go around to my left and your right and finish with Will Albright. Let's talk about schools. Clearly, SAD 51 is blessed with, I believe, U.S. News and World Report said the best high school in Maine, #1. Recognized widely for your excellence in education. But there are many competing priorities. What I would like you each to discuss for 2 minutes is your top priority, either in your seat as a council member or if you were to join the council. What is your top priority for SAD 51 and the school system in this community? Tom, we'll start with you.
I've always supported the school system here in Cumberland, especially the SAD 51. I really don't have a lot to offer at this time because I do not, as a counselor, I do not have any authority to say one way or the other what goes on with the school. That's just the way it is. And if we wanted to make any changes to that, it'd have to be a whole different referendum and a change to our charter. So that's not going to happen. But back to the question, I've always been supportive of the school. I continue to do a lot for the school. I was actually a substitute teacher there for a period of time and enjoyed that. And I will continue to support the school. And I was a strong supporter of the Performing Arts Center, which was controversial, as most people know. But it got built, and I enjoyed. I've been there a number of times with family, and we completely enjoy that. So I'll just stop it there.
Thank you, Tom. Appreciate that. Allison, your top priority for school?
So as a mother of 2 boys, it'd be naive to say I don't have a perspective on this and a vested interest in maintaining the tremendous quality of schools in our community. So I guess in my opinion, I think we can either battle over the fact that the school is going to grow. Will commented on the projected growth in our school system, and I know that there was a study a few years ago, and those projections have come to fruition. So as someone that does planning and projections, I know that assumptions are always critical in those projections and how accurate they are. And so the fact that we can see that the assumptions that have been used are holding strong, I think we have to develop a long-term plan. We can't continue to add portable schools, portable units. At the same time, I think we can either battle on the expense or battle on the revenue, or we could actually collaborate and actually think about a creative solution on both ends. We continue to kind of just focus on this property tax rate, but there's levers within our, the way programs we have in our town, like the senior property tax assistance program, that I think needs some rework. And so we focus on one lever and that something's black and white. And I think there are multitude of levers that we can pull at the same time in order to achieve kind of what my top priority would be, which is we've got to invest in our schools, both physically in the classroom as we are bursting at the seams, as well as continuing to innovate and technology and, learning about and thinking about diversity and inclusion as folks that go through our school system go out into the bright, wide world. So, thank you.
Allison, thank you. Jason, your top priority for education?
Well, that's a hard one. In general, I'm pleased with the school system here. It's hard to argue with the results. MSAD 51 provides a wonderful education. I personally would like to see more focus on science, math, and engineering, and to create the next generation of kids that might change the world through technology. I guess that would be one of my priorities. The other priority that sort of is closely related to that is sort of regulating the growth of our towns as it relates to the schools. I guess I'll leave it at that.
Jason, thank you very much. Bill Stiles?
Do I get his extra minute?
No.
Well, really, when you talk about the town council, you can't really get too involved with the school system, because that's really out of our domain. Every time we try to do that, and take a real forceful attack, we get in trouble. So we need to leave that alone. However, a good education really is based on good teachers and good teaching output. If the children do not want to learn, they won't. So the teachers set that goal and so forth. So I support having great teachers. Now, as I started out on my initial situation, I put 5 children through this school. I have 5 grandchildren in the process of going through this school. I believe there's 5 in there right now. And I have a great-grandchild starting this year in this school system. So obviously, I approve of the school system. I do want to point out to the town and to the people on the panel, if they haven't realized this, when you get your paycheck coming home, all of you, I want you to take that paycheck and put 70% of it in the wastebasket. Because all you have to run your home, pay your bills, feed your children, is 30%. Now, I'm being general here because it's not quite right. 30%. That's what the town has to do to provide services. 70% of our income goes to the school. Now, I have to be truthful. I do not know the parameters that are set up on the school because I haven't been there. We have one counselor who does. But I'd like to think that we can provide the same quality product less expensively.
Bill, thank you very much. And we'll finish this round with Will Albright.
I may be naive, and I've read the charter, and I know we have no direct action where we can force the school board to do what maybe our will to do. But I would like to think that the council would have some sway in to force, not force, but to work with the school board in meeting their needs. Because right now, like I said, my daughter was in a portable. It wasn't the worst thing in the world. She was out, she was disconnected from the school, it wasn't ideal. And then the next year there was more portables added. And I feel that, if the space of land, for every portable that we put in, we take away green space. My girls were in aftercare. They started losing places where they used to play, Foursquare, green fields. These are all things. And what the town council does have sway over with North Yarmouth is space for possibility for new structures. And these are things that we are going to have to think about if we're going to possibly have 600 new students, which is the equivalent of a kindergarten through third grade, another additional one of those piping through the system. We can't just sit here and say that everything's going to be all right, and we'll just put up another portable, and we're going to go from there. So the school system is very important to me as a father who has daughters 9, 6, and 4. 2 of them are in the school system, and one of them will be soon. The last thing about the school system is the school board meeting a couple weeks ago when we were talking about the message that was sent out from the Equity Committee. There was a glaring thing to me that came out of that, and it was past students that had said that they were ill-equipped to leave the homogeneous borders that we have in Maine and go out to the real world and feel like they could succeed in a multicultural society. We need to do better for bringing them into the fold and for sending them out beyond our borders to be able to deal with life that is not just in Maine.
Will, thank you very much. So we've heard a couple of times already tonight about growth in the school system. And I know that here in Cumberland and across the region, growth is an issue that is hotly debated. And unlike school budgets and SADs, town councils have a great deal of control over growth. So I want to ask each of you to share with us, starting with Allison, what is your strategy, your perspective on managing growth in Cumberland?
Thank you. So I actually grew up in a town very similar to Cumberland in Connecticut, where when my parents moved there, it was known for its orchards. Strawberries, apples, blueberries, raspberries. That's how we spent every weekend in the summer and pretty much every weekday that my mom wanted to get us out of the house. I go back there now and it doesn't look at all like the town I grew up in because they developed a very large portion of all those orchards, subdivisions, giant houses. And so for me, while yes, I absolutely understand the growth that is inevitable, I am very sensitive to overdevelopment and also taking away the charm that is our town. For me, the open spaces are tremendously important. Where I live in town, we abut Knights Pond. We also are about a half a mile from the start of the Greeley Woods. So the fact that we have a community that enjoys the outdoors, wants to maintain the outdoors, clearly that is a priority for us as a community, and I would anticipate and be tremendously supportive of continuing that level of investment, and really sensitive to kind of capping the amount of growth and the rezoning of geographies within our town so that we can't just subdivide all this beautiful land that we have.
Allison, thank you. Jason, your thoughts?
Being on the planning board the last year and a half has been educational and insightful. The planning board actually has little ability to truly plan and control the town's growth. The planning board is almost entirely judicial in nature with little ability to shape the town. We simply are required to state whether an applicant is meeting the rules. That is not always an easy task given the size of the ordinance, but nonetheless the planning board has little power to limit growth. This has been difficult for me to accept, especially with our bulging schools. It is one of the reasons I'm running for the council. Real change will have to come from the council. The council will need to force the issue of limiting growth and/or finding ways to squelch it, at least temporarily, and I am in favor of that. I'd like to see permits limited as well as investigate greater impact fees or other fees. However, I'd encourage everyone to read the recent GPCOG report on our town's growth, which gives good insight into our bulging schools and shows most of the issue is not actually coming from new homes. Unfortunately, our current town government creates varied and non-cohesive priorities. What do I mean by that? I think we are lucky to have an amazing town manager and amazing staff. However, what makes our town run better? More revenue. And how do you get more revenue? More houses. What do most houses have? Kids. What happens when we get more kids? Our schools overflow and budgets and spending increase. A budget that is independent of the town's control, by the way. And then we need more revenue. The system is not well built and has no checks and balances to stop this vicious circle. The council, along with the ideas from our amazing residents, should be able to implement a system to help control and balance things better long-term. We need a better built system with incentives to control and better balance this circle and to help control our growth curve and make it more linear over time. If we do not, we will have a bubble that will have a correction, and that will be felt in many areas, including property values, quality of education, and tax impact. I will ask the council to pursue and overhaul these sorts of changes. Thank you.
Jason, thank you very much.
My
Bill?
turn. Thank you. Growth. That has, since I've been on the council, that has been a big Gordian knot. One of the ways we control it is the planning board's supposed to give us a recommendation every 3 years on how many housings we should allow. I haven't seen one of those come in quite a while. I have been privy to at least 3 examinations by good thinkers on what the school system is doing. The first one that came through was, we don't need the Drowns Road School anymore, so we'll get rid of it. So that bounced back and forth between the town and the school. The town finally has it now, and the school's gone. Next one, of course, is the North Yarmouth School. We don't need that anymore, so we get rid of that. And then, knowing that they needed a new school, we built the Performing Arts Center. Now we're in a situation where we're back to the classrooms again. So I don't think the situation is all the town and the growth. Now, I'm an old Yankee. From the point of view, if you own land, if you have a dairy farm or whatever, and your retirement is to sell off a lot or two to build houses on, I think you should be able to do that. Controlling this growth has both intended consequences and many unintended consequences. We have not met the growth standard that we've allowed houses in this town for quite a few years. So more houses could have been built than have been built. And then, of course, you have the flip side, that as people get older and move out of the house, those of us who have no children, the house becomes ripe for more children. So I agree with my competitor here that it needs to be looked at, and I think we look at it continually, but we take the input that we got.
Well, thank you. Bill, thank you very much. Now I'm gonna go.
I got the W.
Exactly. Whoa, 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 whoa. Right.
Yeah, growth is good. I mean, growth brings more people to the town. Growth brings more excise taxes. But you know, with the limited amount of space, and I'm going to get back to the schools, and I don't want to keep beating this drum, but the more people that come in, the people that are coming here are not coming here to retire. The people that are moving into town are people that have kids. My neighbors are selling. They're going in. They're staying in with town limits, and they're moving to a place and they're going to refurbish it. It's a 1-bedroom with no family in it. Now there's going to be another family and they're going to refurbish the house. The house they're selling is a couple coming from out of state, and they're moving here with 3 young children. Across the street from me, there's a development with 10 houses that are going in. I can guarantee, and I would, if I was a betting man, and I have been known to wager a couple times in my life, that the people that move into those houses will bring children with them. Whatever age they are, I wouldn't bet. But I'm saying that so this is more tax on the school system. I can't say that what people do with their land when they retire, they should be able to do with it what they want. But to Allison's point, I don't want to turn around in 10 years and have a school system that is completely overflooded with portable on top of portable. And I don't want to have subdivisions everywhere. The charm of Cumberland, and the reason my wife and I are coming out of New York and we randomly looked at Cumberland, we were looking at Falmouth, Yarmouth, was driving in and seeing the countryside and seeing the farmland and seeing the green space. And there has to be something that we attach ourselves to the history of Cumberland and to try to keep that alive, because if we put too many subdivisions, if we have too much expansion, then we're going to lose that charm. I'll stop there since my time is.
Well, thank you. Tom, you get to finish up this round on growth.
I'll be the closer then. The SAD is the reason that more families move into Cumberland, without a doubt. And that's That's one of our assets, as far as I'm concerned, to see the community grow accordingly. In the past, one time in the past, the council wanted to limit growth here in the community. And that has changed. We now have ordinances that are geared towards controlling growth, such as the number of houses that can be built. So that helps, but again, you got to remember that what attracts people into Cumberland is the SAG. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. We've already touched on this topic, but I think it's very important that voters have a good insight into the budget and taxes. It's something that everyone likes to talk about, and obviously, sitting on the council, this becomes a critical point of decision. So I'm going to start with Jason Record, and I'm going to ask you what your budget and tax priorities are for the council.
I'm going to shift that a little bit, talk a little bit more about the school budget. Again, MSAD 51 is wonderful, provides a wonderful education. In general, I don't take great issue with a budget that roughly follows typical inflation. And I mean net spending of dollars, not the mill rate. The mill rate easily hides the real increases in spending because there is usually more revenue on the income side, which dilutes everyone's share. But this year is not a typical year. The town took the safest approach possible and reduced spending significantly, submitting a negative budget. Kudos to the council and to Bill and everyone that was part of that for making that happen and for making those tough decisions. On the other hand, our school budget will increase nearly 5%. I believe a similar edict should have been made by the school board to submit a flat or negative budget. We are in tough and unprecedented times. All options should be on the table for freezing costs. In these tough times, a spending increase of nearly 5% shows little compassion and respect for our struggling residents and the state of our world. I love our schools and our amazing staff, and I support keeping our schools near the top of the list, but I think we can do better with more efficient spending. This issue ties in very closely to our town growth and the ratio of our businesses versus housing. If other towns can do it, so can we.
Jason, thank you. Bill, what are your thoughts about budget and
Chris,
taxes?
would you restate the question, please?
Yeah, absolutely.
I lost it.
What I want to get your insight into is the municipal budget and the tax rate are always difficult conversations where priorities are expressed. I want to hear what your priorities are relative to taxes and the budget in Cumberland.
I think I've already stated it. My priorities is to produce the lowest possible tax rate for the town, particularly my children who are always wanting, and I want them to be able to stay in town and not get priced out. Jason brings up some real good points. However, that's on the other side of the coin. We're talking about the town now. The cuts that we did to the budget this past year are critical. They have to, from going on out, we have to be very careful how we monitor our spending. It's going to take us a while to build back up the projects that we have, the regular normal maintenance projects we have to do, which is one of the reasons I feel I need to get back on the council because I'm familiar with these. For example, the citizens along the railway want to have railway quiet crossings. I mean, that's what we cut out of the budget, what they really, really wanted, and that's a quality of life issue. There are other projects, roads that need to be repaved and so forth. It's expensive to pave roads. It's expensive to put, people say they want to put sidewalks in. You know, that's $500,000 a mile to put a sidewalk in. I mean, that's expensive. And when you want to try and keep your tax rate down, you can't go making those kind of expenses. So my goal is to provide for the services that the town needs, fire, rescue, plow the roads, et cetera, at the best possible price. And I do it with a beer pocketbook, not a champagne one.
Thank you very much, Bill. Will, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, it's in these trying times, any increase or decrease works well in either ways. I mean, we're sitting at the first phase of what's going on with COVID and how it's going to affect us on our economic levels. I mean, we haven't been through the summer. Summer is Maine's time to shine. It's our bread and butter season. It's with our tourism. We don't know where we're going to be. So, the town did a great job of cutting the budget down from last year with all that going forward. And this is, like I said, a very difficult time. And I talked about being a betting man before. I would not bet on where anything lays going forward. We don't know how it's going to be. We don't know how we're going to get through the summer. And easing the burden on our residents is something that we should do. But I don't think cutting money out for certain roads and not doing paving for certain things is in our best interest. The road on Route 9 from Town Center going into Portland is a disaster. People have to drive that every day. It takes a toll and tax on their cars. I mean, if we're talking about looking after our citizens, that's somebody's an axle or a couple tires away from not being able to meet their next bills or feed their kids, or because they have to spend $1,000 on some car work. And I would just want to make sure that when we're cutting, we do prioritize certain things that we can look and know that they're going to affect citizens in certain ways, and to make sure that while we are looking to keep the dollars down so that all of our citizens can make ends meet with our young and our old, but we need to be able to make sure that, there's people that are driving down and other people in other situations with our budget rate are looked after and taken care of. Thank you.
Thank you, Will. Tom, what are your thoughts on budget and taxes?
Well, I've been on the Finance Committee for the last 9 years, as well as Bill, and now Bob Vail is on that committee now as well. I got to tell you, being on the Finance Committee, you get to know a lot what's going on, and it's very important to be on that committee, and I appreciate the fact that I'm on it. One time in the past, we actually gave a tax decrease to the community. And guess what? They expected it next year, and then the next year. What a mistake that was. We should have never done it. It was a mistake, and I was part of that mistake. Yes, COVID-19 has a lot to do with the projected revenues that we have, but I got to tell you, thanks to the staff, especially Tammy O'Donnell, and the folks that are working the front desk, they actually helped us with the revenue that we weren't expecting as a finance committee, and it's actually a lot better than we projected. Doesn't mean it's that we're out of the clear, but we still have some issues to go through, but it's looking much better, and. I got to tell you, the importance of the revenue that we get is so important to this community, because if we don't have the revenue, we're going to have deficit situations which are not good for this community. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Allison, I think you get the last word for now on budget and
I do.
taxes.
So I think I'll answer it more in how I would break it down. So, I've looked at the budget, and I don't think there's anything glaring in there that I'd say, we should be taking a 20% haircut somewhere. So I think for me, it's more of how I would bring as a council, bringing in more perspectives. Today, I don't think it's appropriate that, 7 people are deciding what my priorities are and how much I'm willing to spend for services. And so how can we get our community more engaged? 7 o'clock, I'll admit, it's bedtime for my kids. And I'm sure it's about bedtime for everyone else. So how many town council meetings or committee meetings am I able to participate in? But send me a pulse survey. Send me 3 questions of what are my priorities, and I'll give it to you. I can give you that at any time of day when I'm going to bed and surfing the web. So I think kind of as we think about our council and what we want from it and how we can infuse some new energy and new perspective, I think it's amazing the service our current councils have given and their committees they have served on. but they're working within their sphere, their circle, their bubble, and those perspectives. So how do we bring in the different perspectives so that all 7 can work together and say, hey, this is what I'm hearing. Is that what you're hearing? And if they disconnect, we figure out where the balance is. But right now, there is a large constituency that doesn't feel heard. And I think we can change that.
Allison, thank you. I'm going to move on to a slightly different kind of question. And I'm going to start with Bill. There are a lot of issues that municipalities cannot deal with by themselves. There are times when municipalities need to work together as a region in order to solve problems. I'd like to ask each of you to share with me one problem in Cumberland that you think would be well addressed from a regional perspective. So Bill, I'll start with you.
Wow. You probably know that for the last 10 years, I've been very active in attempting to regionalize just about everything. I think one of the things that could be easily regionalized is the fire department. Every town doesn't need a ladder truck, in my opinion. Now we're having also the problems with manpower in the fire stations. Rescue could be another one. We started out here regionalizing rescue where we had provided paramedics for the several towns. And for whatever reason, that fell by the wayside when some of the towns felt that they wanted their own rather than to regionalize. It was very interesting a while back when the state was in quite a turmoil on what was going to happen with the, and I'll get the name wrong, I think it was Pelosi was involved. Pileski, that's the one, thank you. I want to give it to Pelosi, but it's Pileski. It was amazing how the police departments, the fire departments, and all the towns came up with a plan whereby they could consolidate and regionalize. Once she was defeated, it went by the wayside. It would still work today, and we continually look for ways to regionalize, and I think it could be done with the schools. I think some school could offer different classes, and each school department pick up the kids to go there. So there's a lot of things that could be done that way, but the problem is getting the municipal people to agree to do it. If it was my business and my corporation, I would say next Wednesday, we all go to Bangor, and it would be done. And it just doesn't work that way in municipals. The other thing is the same different thing. We talk about the roads, you know, and what you put on the roads. Remember, some of these roads are state roads, and we don't control them.
That's very true. Thank you, Bill. We're going to swing over here to Will. And
Well, can you just repeat, regionally, what do you mean? Who's in charge of regionally?
so lots of times, towns will come together to solve a problem they can't solve on their own. The establishment of EcoMaine is a good example of regional action, and we could talk about other things. But I wondered if there were any problems in Cumberland that you saw as really
Like our decision-making process. I feel like there are voices that are unheard in our community. And like the idea of other people coming in to like help us solve some of the things that we need to solve in-house is not welcome on my part. I'm sure they're an issue that they're down the line that could be, and we'd say we'd welcome the, we already have to interact with North Yarmouth because we're married in our school system. And, we don't need anything else in that. I am confident that, our town council and the members that I hope to be serving in the town council would be able to, handle all the things that they can themselves. We definitely don't need more people trying to make decisions. I mean, if someone's trying to sell hard cider at the Cumberland Farmers Market, they're not allowed to because they already got to cut through enough red tape to go through the ability to even do that, even if they're sourced locally. If people want to have a wedding on their property, they have to jump through numerous amounts of hoops just locally. So I think if we could cut down on some of the stuff that we make our own citizens jump through, that would be a good thing for the residents of Cumberland.
Thank you very much. Tom, what are your thoughts on regional solutions to Cumberland problems?
Well, first, I want to say that this council now works very well together. And we might have different, differences, but at the end of the day, we all work together very well. So I just want to make sure that you know that. What's the issue with regionalization? Well, the simple answer is, as long as I can control it, that's how it's going to be. If I don't have control, it's not going to happen. It's just not going to happen. And we tried and tried and tried and tried to do regionalization, and it's going to come one day. Probably not in my lifetime, but it will come. And it's going to be demanded by the communities. So it will happen. I know it's going to happen. I got to tell you, as when I was the chair of the council a few years back, I met with the neighboring communities, Falmouth and Yarmouth, and talked about where we could regionalize. And I got to tell you, we all drank the Kool-Aid and everything was fine, but when it got back to going back to their councils, it didn't happen. And I was surprised that it didn't. I get phone calls daily from residents in this community. And I got to tell you, I just think that we are plugged in to this community. I really feel that we do a very good job. And I just want to defend that a little bit, so that's it.
Tom, thank you very much. Allison?
So from a governance standpoint, I think the comment's right. There's always winners and losers. So where's that fire department going to be located? And does that town end up having a little more sway and a little more weight on where that investment happens? So I think from a governance standpoint, I think I'd be in that camp of that doesn't really seem like the best bet, at least in the short term. That being said, when it comes to learnings and collaboration, that's how I've built my career. It's about operational efficiency and best practices. And again, I think when you are used to doing something the same way for a long period of time, it's hard to look in the mirror and say there's a different way to do it. And so I think, again, with some fresh blood, is there an opportunity not to point out necessarily like someone made a mistake and you're wrong, but to say, had you ever thought about this? Can we give this a try? Have you talked to so-and-so? I think there's an opportunity to do more around learnings and best practices versus a true kind of regional of governance. So when it comes to technological investments and systems we're using, are we really using the best, or is there an opportunity if we cooperated, can we all upgrade a system because we're going to a certain software company and saying, we're gonna all 3 towns buy it at the same time, and you're gonna train all of us once, and that's efficient and that's cost effective. I think that's more what I would envision as being an opportunity.
Allison, thank you. Jason, last word on regional problems.
Well, that's tough to follow. A lot of good points there, varied points. We're talking about efficiencies of scale, buying in bulk, which is business 101. You know, if you can't increase revenues, you can try to reduce costs, which just makes sense. And we ought to explore all those options. Bill's got fair points about combining police, fire, all services. However, on the other side, to many people's points, you're complicating things even more. It's hard enough to get the people in one town to agree, much less 2 or 3 or 4 towns. So I think that would be difficult. It's not worth exploring. And to Allison's point, you know, polling our residents is one of the greatest assets that we have. We have wonderful people in this town, very, very smart people, and I would look to them for submitting their ideas and finding those ways to create efficiencies. I think combining schools would be very difficult, not sure about that, but all other things, you know, food services for the schools, you know, again, efficiencies of scale might make sense. Use of technology, use of combined trainings. Lots of great ideas up here. That's it, thank you.
Jason, thank you. I just want to pause to say that I think all 5 candidates are doing a marvelous job of addressing the issues, answering my questions, and I hope that you, the voters, are getting insight into each of their interests and capacities and priorities as you think about voting. My last question, which is going to start with Will and come around this way, is just slightly more personal in that I would, we're in a time of enormous crisis. We have a pandemic. Black Lives Matter is dominating community discussions. We have a recession that we are dealing with. There's probably never been a more important time to get to yes, to find ways to bring different views together and work for the benefit of our community. So I'd like each of our candidates to share with us, if they could, their own personal view on how they would work in a council of 7 people and with a community to find common ground and do things that are of benefit to the community. And Will, I'm going to start with you.
It's general benefit to the community, like, or is there anything specific for the benefit of the
No,
community?
I'm really interested in your personal approach to finding how to get to yes with people who maybe don't agree with you on the council. How do you resolve conflict and find common ground? What's your style? How do you do it?
And I'll speak to this in my closing statement as well a little bit, but I think people need to be represented. People need to be listened to. I will say, 6 months ago, I've lived here for 6 years, I couldn't point out a member of the town council. I wouldn't know him from a can of paint. And that's a little bit on me, but that's a little bit on the council. I think that being active, a little bit more active in the community, being a little bit more active on social media, like making things a little bit more accessible so that they are more involved in the community is something that my generation or younger people are a little bit more used to. These meetings, like Allison touched to, Monday at 7 or twice a month aren't necessarily good for the whole of the community. I mean, there's no videotape replay of them. The minutes come out randomly, and as they're put out as best they can. My style for dealing with the citizens is just to listen. The residents of the community, if they're coming and they're talking to a town councilman, they have something to say and they want you to hear it. And we're not trying to tell them the right way or tell them that we're going to do anything to them, but people need you to listen to them.
That's great. You all set?
I'm all set.
Thank you. Tom?
I feel the council members are well-known here in this community. I can't imagine that we're not. So I just need to say that. The town council's meetings are all on video. They're all shown, and they're on television as well on 1302. So they're there, and I think it's important that people know that. And I am a little concerned about saying that there is a lack of knowledge about what's going on, because I think attendance at a council meeting every once in a while would do everybody some good. So it's just not a matter of saying, well, I don't think that we should just say that the council is not engaged. And like I said a few minutes ago, that I get calls every day, and it's from citizens in this community. So we just need to repeat that. So I think there's a lot of benefit to the council that we have, and I feel that it's been very supportive, and I really feel that the council does a terrific job today. That's all.
Thank you, Tom. Allison?
So every day in my job, I actually deal with quite the varied constituencies, stakeholders, from how they process the world. So actuaries, right, our super analytical number people, to our field organization in insurance, which is salespeople. So think about your two opposite spectrum, and then I'm in the middle. And I often find myself in what I call as the translator role, which is it breaks down to communication. Are we truly listening? And when we're talking, are we making sure we're really talking to everyone and that they're understanding what we're saying? Sometimes that means you have to reach out. So just getting the phone calls doesn't mean you're hearing everyone. I think, unfortunately, right now, the way our, not just this council, but the way government works, the squeaky wheel gets the oil. And so how can we more proactively reach out and really feel like, okay, who are the buckets of our constituency, and have we heard from all of them? Or is this that we're just staying within our sphere and our bubble of who's actively reaching out to us as a council? So for me, it's about really listening and communicating in a way that, you know, we're making sure that when we're saying something, that is, check for that understanding. Is that really what they're hearing when I'm saying what I think I'm saying? And so for me, my job is all about getting to yes, right? I have to get both sides of that equation to agree on and understand why the strategy is what it is and get us all on board on how do we move forward and execute that strategy. So for me, I think, if anything, pretty well positioned to be able to do that in this space as well.
Allison, thank you. Jason, how do you get to yes?
Chris, I'm going to pivot a little bit. I talk about some of those things in my closing statement. So I wanted to take the 2 minutes to talk about something else, and that's a red hot topic going on in our town right now, and that's the Equity Committee. And it touches on your subject as well. I absolutely, without reservation, believe in equal value of every life. I believe in equal rights and also equal justice for all. I've been impressed with our residents' ability to discuss this sensitive subject and debate cordially. The disappointing part is, why is there a debate? I think 99% of our town would agree with my statement about equal rights and justice and value. So why are we now divided? Because of words. Right or wrong, soapbox or ignorance, dividing good people who support the same goal is poor practice and counterproductive. Our leaders could have taken a different approach. When you are preaching to the choir, there is no need to be disrespectful. I do not approve of radical organizations or radical tactics. They certainly create headlines, but they are a poor way for healthy, lasting change. Our most powerful and lasting influential activists from history always chose peace and love over violence. Unfortunately, we have signed up with a radical activist group. I support the committee. I do not support the current approach or our partnership with CCI. We should continue the committee with a more grounded organization, or simply take a look at other schools and the things they have done. The committee also needs more diversity in its members and their views or approach. This subject is a difficult one, but we are in a land of good-hearted, open-minded people. Let's encourage people to continue to grow in their own way and not incite further division. I think the committee should exist but be modified. I think CCI should be replaced, and I think the verbiage and approach should be changed with greater collaboration of varied views and a look to other communities. We are in unprecedented times, which is an opportunity. Success or failure will come down to our approach going forward. Thank you.
Jason, thank you much.
Chris,
Bill, you have the last word.
I've heard too many people that, what was the subject I'm supposed to be talking about?
I've asked, how do you get to yes? How do you work with divergent views and find common ground? How do you do that?
Well, that's, having been in the military and a squad leader, officer in charge of quality control, et cetera, I learned very easily how to do that. One of the main things you have to do is listen. If you listen long enough, you can usually determine what the problem is, and you can bring 2 or 3 people together and solve the problem. As far as, this is something that the council works on all the time, getting the word out to everybody. So Will, I'm sorry that you haven't caught it, but we do have, everything is videotaped. And Tom, it's on 1301, not 2.
Darn it.
And the Cumberland Crier, if you haven't signed up for that, you should get that. That is a good means of information, as well as the output from the library. Now, being a paramedic in this town for some 30-odd years, I probably have been in a majority of the homes here and know the people. I have 2 nephews that live in town and their children, so I'm familiar with that. Again, I told you I had my 5 children. I'm a member of the Farmers Club. And the committees that Tom and I serve on give us all kinds of input from all kinds of people in the town. I serve on the library committee, so I'm always at those meetings. And Historical Society, all those people there get to talk to me. West Cumberland, I actually held a specific meeting where the Cumberland residents came and talked to me. It was requested by a resident, and so I got together at the meeting and we met at the West Cumberland Hall. I don't know that I can finish this in 22 seconds, but I think that we endeavor as councilors to get as much input as we can. But remember, it's the responsibility of the citizen to take some of this responsibility because they have to at least present themselves so they can get the information. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you, Bill. We are up to closing statements. I want to thank our candidates again, and we're going to begin our 2-minute closing statements with Tom Gruber.
Why am I running? Well, first of all, I'm running because I'd like to see the Public Works facility completed, especially for all my friends in Village Green. That is an important project that we have going on right now. Also, I'd like to see our community build affordable senior housing. And I know that I've tried a number of times, and we'll eventually get there. And I really like to see affordable senior housing. And then I would like to have Cumberland produce its own, and this is Bob Vale's idea, and I really support it, to have its own food for the entire community. I think that is very, very important, and if we work on it, and we're using the Lands and Conservation Commission to help us through that right now, so it's doing very well. And then I would also like to see Cumberland one day be its own public utility, that we generate our own electricity for the entire community. So I like to see those happen, and I just love Cumberland, and I will continue to support it in any way that I can. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Allison, your closing statement.
There's a reason our community has a town council and not a mayor. At its core, this means we believe one person or viewpoint should not set the vision for our community or its day-to-day priorities. It also is aimed at improving the transparency of the decision process so that one person doesn't hold all the knowledge of the what, the why, and the how. I am not sitting here today asking you to let me lead you. Rather, I am asking for you to let me represent you. For you to let me, in working with my fellow members of this council, to develop a long-term vision for our community and outline realistic and honest steps to get there. As an insurance professional, I have built my career as a strategic planner. For the last 17 years, I have leveraged my analytical skills, educated in economics and finance, to develop strategies balancing both the quantitative and the qualitative. A strategy built on numbers alone rarely tells the full story. Human nature, what motivates us, what makes us feel safe and heard, really heard, are all of equal importance compared to the numbers, as we are a community make some tough decisions over the coming years as the trajectory of our town. I do not sit here tonight telling you that my perspective or opinions are right and that others are wrong. However, I do sit here tonight pointing out the glaringly missing ideas, perspectives, priorities, and realities of our current council. So yes, I am asking for your vote as a way to help me improve the diversity and, more importantly, the inclusion of diverse perspectives in our council. So I will leave you with the words of American clergyman Reverend William Sloane Coffin, Jr. Diversity may be the hardest thing for a society to live with, and perhaps the most dangerous thing for a society to be without. Thank you, moderator. Thank you, fellow council candidates, for thoughtful and respectful sharing of ideas this evening. And thank you, neighbors, for being here and listening both virtually and in person. I look forward to the opportunity to serve as one of your council members.
Allison, thank you. Jason Record.
I'm running for sustainability. I'm running for better balance and to give people a voice. I look for ways to make things better, and I am not afraid to ask the hard questions when needed. I prefer logic and facts over emotions, and prefer to focus on solutions rather than problems. I am detail-oriented and think any good solution comes down to the details that properly incentivizes and balances all sides of a problem. I do not automatically accept the prognosis of a situation that is given to me by others. I always question what is being done is right and if there is a better way. I try hard not to let pride and ego become part of the equation, and I am pleased to help someone else bring a good idea to fruition. I do that all for the greatest good and do that for the best long-term sustainable approach. Sustainability is something our town is struggling with right now, and we need to do better in many areas. I will be a younger person on the council with school-age children. I know the value of a dollar and how to stretch those dollars for best overall value. Not necessarily the absolute best, but best value and most efficient. I appreciate all viewpoints and absolutely welcome thoughtful solutions from our residents. I will listen to your input. I want to help our senior residents be able to stay here. We owe it to them for building such an amazing town. I think our town is great and want to help keep it that way and continue to be an example of good Maine values. I encourage all residents to get involved and stay involved with your thoughtful input and good solutions to today's problems. Let's work on good long-term solutions. Speak up and share with your officials. If elected, I will be listening. I would be proud to represent you and would appreciate your vote. Thanks.
Jason, thank you. Bill Stiles.
Thank you. Well, I'm running to be reelected, of course, and I want to continue some of the nice things that we've done so far. But I start out with a couple of questions. Allison states that she can't make 7 p.m. meetings. How can she attend council meetings, which are all 7 p.m.? Sometimes earlier, sometimes later. And then none of the candidates running this year attended any of the budget hearings we had that were at various different times. And I'm just amazed at that. Now, have I seen any one of them at a council meeting? Doesn't mean they weren't there. It means I haven't seen them. So that's kind of unusual, I would think, for a person looking to have a position and not show up to any of the budget hearings, and particularly the budget hearing when we cut the budget by $900,000. It's amazing, makes me think. We, I think, have been doing a great job, and I want to continue to do that. I think that I have quite a bit of input, as I mentioned, from my children, from the members of the Farmers Club, from the church groups that I've seen. I just think I'm the better candidate at this time. Thank you. Please vote for me.
Bill, thank you very much. Will.
Excuse me, it's been a minute since I talked to. I'm not going to stand up here and expound on why I'm the best candidate. Everyone on the stage is capable. I commend the 2 members that currently serve for their service. A lot of people in this community are capable, and it was painful for me to see and look at the fact that there was 2 elections where no one ran against either one of these people. Democracy is alive, and everyone should have a choice when they get to the ballot box. The job of the town councilor is important. We need to serve our community in the present and plan for the future. Make sure the roads are paved, the lights are on, the bills are paid. Important decisions will be made in the next few years, and we need to act in a fiscally responsible way and ensure all members of our community are reflected in those decisions. We live in a country that does not treat all of its citizens equally, and that will not change unless each and every one of us does. We must take action against racism and social injustice. We can't be scared of words or being uncomfortable while fellow citizens are marginalized. Listening to the school board meeting, it was glaring to me that we need to do better for our children. It is imperative that our children are equipped with the knowledge and ability to interact in a multicultural society. I look at my 3 daughters, and I want them to believe in democracy. I want them to feel when they see something they don't like in their community, or they want to change something, it is up to them to do it. Run for office, volunteer, get involved in the community. I want my daughters to have a sense of civic duty that doesn't stop with jury duty, paying taxes, and obeying laws. I want them to listen and to act. Speak up for members of society who don't feel represented, for people that are marginalized. All levels of government matter. What people say and their words they use matter. Their actions matter. Our current president could prove this fact anymore. with the most dishonest, disgraceful, and self-serving executive officer our country has ever seen. I'm going to finish my remarks with a quote from Mr. Rogers. We live in a world in which we need to share responsibility. It's easy to say it's not my child, not my community, not my world, not my problem. Then there are those who see the need and respond. I consider those people my heroes. I'm Carlton W. Albright. I'm running for town council. I hope to represent the people of Cumberland and listen to what you have to say about the town of Cumberland, our state, and our country. Thank you.
Thank you. And ladies and gentlemen, that concludes our Meet the Candidates night. I want to thank everyone in the audience and at home watching or on the internet for joining us for this time. And I hope that you have learned much more about all 5 of these fine candidates. And most importantly, I hope you cast your ballot on July 14th, either in person or by absentee. Thank you all and good night.